What's up, y'all? Polly here. Welcome back to my and Poppy's YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about pro wrestling's involvement in the history of hockey. We got a good one for you today. So it's 1840s and pro wrestling has entered mainstream America. And what I mean by mainstream America, the circus has come into town. Now, it's not often most people got to see the circus. In fact, most people didn't really get into the circus scene till about 1920s. However, you may seem, the carnival and the circus been around since a little bit before the Civil War, with Abraham Lincoln. Yes, Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president of the United States, was involved with pro wrestling. And you know what that means. Abe Lincoln, Mr. I cannot tell a lie. What Abe Lincoln used, sir, is a lying son of a bitch. And watch me spread your dead head on the floor of the Ford once again. Spread more blood than all your puny civil wars. And that's right. Promotional, or what we now call promos, has been around since the dawn of pro wrestling. Now, you'll hear most wrestlers say that wrestling was not discovered fake until about 1930, but in a way, most people that was involved with it knew it was rather gimmick. Now, the reason why wrestling was gimmick was people were starting to place bets on Greco wrestling, which is what pro wrestling is actually based off of, and the carnival decided to rig it, as they do with literally everything else you do at the carnival. The carnival is there for one reason and one reason only: to take your money, make money, and make as much of it as possible. Very similar to how it costs $8 to buy a freaking dragon fruit at the supermarket today. That is a scam also. But anyway, so to put the bet in the carnies' favor, they would determine win-loss based on where the bets was being placed. They would discuss the match beforehand, do the match, and the winner was always the carnival. So how did this correlate with hockey? So as you know, modern hockey arenas are most of the time do at least two sports: hockey and basketball. But there's a third one in most hockey arenas, where you have pro wrestling and boxing. That's the ring finger. So, the reason why that is, a sports arena is made for a whole bunch of seats in the area. Yeah, you can tell me that sports arenas are largely based off of your Roman Colosseums and your Greek theaters, particularly off the Circus Maximus and, well, the Colosseum. And in a way that's true, largely that modern sports events wasn't around till the circus era, which started around 1840, lasting through around the 1940s is when they really waned off with televised entertainment. Nowadays, circuses, they're less about creatures, more about acrobatics. You really won't see pro wrestling at a circus anymore. Now, let's reel it back a little bit and explain the term real quick. In wrestling, you'll hear a term what's called squared circle. And where that comes from is, in your circus eras, in your carnival eras, the wrestlers would wrestle in the circle. Because that's where your shows took place. It took place in a circle. And even to this day, because the tents are circular, the audience sits in a circle as well inside of your circus tents. About 1920, when boxing started really coming into fruition, Pro wrestling adapted itself to the boxing ring, so they squared the circle, hence that term. Before we carry forward, I'd like to discuss a little bit of the gear the pro wrestler wears inside of modern pro wrestling that takes place in these sports arenas where basketball, pro wrestling, and hockey takes place. And starting us off, I'm going to use this basically a plain set of leather black boots. You'll see this with most military characters. And other characters, Sergeant Slaughter primarily wore a black boot, as well as essentially most pro wrestlers either wear these or at some point or another. The Dudley Boyz wear black with, of course, 3D inscribed on the side or sewn onto the side. Ric Flair worn black boots. Booker T has worn black as well as white. This is just a plain set of leather black boots. The more you wear them, the more comfortable they get. This right here is a set of gold boots. Most of these boots are from highspots.com. For my people that wants to be a pro wrestler at some point, that's where you get this gear. These tassels I made myself. I planned on going to wrestling school myself, which is what you got to do to be a pro wrestler. You have to go to wrestling school and get certified to become a wrestler, what they call a wrestling license. These tassels right here, it's not uncommon for wrestlers, especially in their early careers, to make their own gear. Another prime example of making gear would be my armband. A lot of wrestlers like to wear tassels, armbands, whatever case may be. This is a little mixture of both. And as far as the pads themselves, these are a set of knee pads. I don't have a set of kick pads on hand. This is essentially just a neoprene sleeve with a piece of high density foam, as well as same with the elbow pad. Both of these are AMA pads, some of the best pads in the business. It's a piece of neoprene with a piece of, feels like neoprene foam on the inside as well. I'll show you a piece of the tassels. The boot tassels just lace into the boots, which is just an easy way to have tassels on your boots without actually having to have a custom boot. So that's modern wrestling. You will have a kick pad which covers the toe of the boot, goes all the way up the shin. Typically that's used by more high flyers, people that's more at risk of hitting the ropes. To talk about more of the construction of the ring, which applies more for our subject today of wrestling inside of a hockey arena. Pro wrestling rings are not comfortable. Let me scoot y'all up just a little bit. I'm gonna say this again. Pro wrestling rings are not comfortable. They are a steel frame with wood boards all on the top and a piece of foam that's like an inch tall at best. The most flexible part of the ring, the middle, you're still hitting a bunch of wood boards when you get body slammed and stuff. So yes, it is scripted, which if you're watching wrestling for the actual combat, you're watching it for the wrong reasons. Wrestling is a man's soap opera. You're watching it for the drama, you're watching it for the storyline. The whole point of wrestling in the modern world is to tell a story. Also to make money, like the Carney Age, but it's less about scamming people about the end of the match and more about selling an entertaining product. So when the World Wrestling Federation, rest in peace, thank you World Wildlife Fund for being a bad but thank you World Wildlife Fund for taking away the World Wrestling Federation name over WWF.com. Don't know why the World Wrestling Federation couldn't just go WWFed.com or whatever. Or World Wildlife Fund could just be WorldWildlifeFund.com. No, they just had to go after acronyms, and the WWF had to be, well, we'll just be WWE. So now it's World Wrestling Entertainment, but I guess the whole point is the entertainment part is what they're selling you on. At the end of the day, that's why we watch hockey on TV, is to be entertained. Goalie coaches take notes. Give me some damn individuals to watch. Everybody looks the same. Except Bob, because for whatever reason Bob will take his glove. This is it's a Maxon glove. I'll cover this at one point. He'll take his glove in the RVH and has it backwards for whatever reason. Now kids are doing it and they're getting their wrist broken by shots. But maybe Bob adds in a little extra wrist padding to be able to make those types of saves. After all, he is a two-time Stanley Cup champion and has been pretty dang good since he played with the Flyers. So who am I to crap on Bob? Officer Bob, we salute you. So we covered ring construction, we covered wrestling gear, we covered the promotional material. I think at this point, it's a good time for me to suit up and close off this little bit of hockey arena history. Fun fact, the first sports arena that hosted all three major sports that Sports Coliseum holds, with boxing and pro wrestling, basketball, and hockey, would be the Baltimore Coliseum, in which they hosted pro wrestling and boxing in the 1930s, hosted basketball starting in 1944 with the NBA, and in about 1961 hosted their first hockey game. All throughout that time, they also hosted a variety of large-scale acts, from Chuck Berry and the Beatles and so many, many more. In 2008, it was demolished because it hadn't been used since the late 80s. We'll be doing an episode that covers more on the Baltimore Coliseum later on. If you like this type of content, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you right after I beat Abraham Lincoln's dead ass. Rest in peace.